Welcome to Reddit Revenge Stories. Did you know over 90% of our viewers don't subscribe? If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. We're targeting 500 likes on this one. Let's dive into today's tale. I never thought I'd be the man telling this story. When I married Rachel, I truly believed we'd grow old together. I pictured the classic scenes: quiet Sunday mornings, birthdays with our future kids, wrinkles earned over years of laughter. I thought we were that kind of couple. Real, strong, unbreakable. But life has a strange way of testing those beliefs. I met Rachel in college. She was sharp, passionate, and had this confidence that could light up a room. We were study partners, turned friends, and before long, something more. We got married 5 years after graduating, after establishing ourselves in our respective careers. Me in software engineering, her in corporate sales. We lived in a modest but cozy home in the suburbs. We weren't flashy people. We preferred barbecues with friends over fancy parties, Netflix over nightclubs. Our life felt stable, maybe even boring to some, but I liked it that way. At first, nothing seemed wrong. We still kissed goodbye every morning. We still talked over dinner. But there were signs, small ones, the kind you shrug off at first. She started working late more often. At first, I didn't question it. Her company had been pushing hard toward end-of-quarter targets. It made sense. But then came the late-night texts she wouldn't let me see. The sudden increase in her business trips. The way she started putting her phone face down. I wanted to trust her. I'd always trusted her. But trust only works when both people are honest. One Friday night, she came home past midnight. I was still up, half watching a movie. She claimed she'd been at a client dinner, said she was exhausted, kissed me on the forehead, and went straight to bed. But something about the way she avoided my eyes, the way her voice trembled slightly when she spoke, struck me. The next morning, I noticed a receipt in the trash. 2 dinners at a fancy restaurant that I knew wasn't one of her usual business places. It could have been for clients, but the tip was too personal. A little note written on the receipt. "Thanks for the amazing night." My heart dropped. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to be sure. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I started watching, listening, checking phone logs, not reading messages, just numbers and times. I started keeping track of her trips. I asked a friend in IT to help me set up a basic monitoring app on her phone. I hated myself for it. But the deeper I looked, the more it added up. And then it all clicked into place one Tuesday afternoon. She said she was going on a 3-day work trip to Boston. But her phone's GPS showed she never left the city. She spent those nights at a hotel downtown. A hotel just 5 blocks from where I worked. I drove there the next day on my lunch break. I sat in my car, heart racing, and then I saw them. Rachel and Mark. Mark was my oldest friend, my best man. The guy who helped me move into my first apartment. The guy I trusted like a brother. They walked out of the hotel holding hands, laughing like teenagers. She leaned into him and kissed his cheek. He wrapped his arm around her waist. They looked happy, carefree, like they hadn't destroyed someone's world. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't scream or confront them. I just watched. I felt frozen, hollow. I went home that night and stared at our wedding photo on the wall. The frame suddenly looked like a joke. All that hope, that love, it had all been a lie. But I didn't confront her, not yet. Because if I had learned anything from being betrayed, it was this. Revenge wasn't loud. It was patient, precise, calculated. I decided I wasn't going to be the broken husband crying and begging for answers. I was going to be the man who took back control, who made them regret every lie they told. I started planning. I didn't stop being the loving husband, not outwardly anyway. I still cooked dinner, still asked about her day, still kissed her goodbye in the mornings, but every moment I spent with her now had a purpose. I began separating our finances, slowly, quietly. I moved half our savings into a private account she didn't know about. I rerouted my direct deposit. I gathered proof, screenshots, emails, timestamps, everything I needed to build a timeline of her betrayal. I also started recording our conversations. I knew that if things got ugly, and they would, I'd need evidence. I wasn't going to lose everything because of her lies. What surprised me most during all this was how easy it was for her to lie. How easily she looked me in the eye and told me she loved me. She even suggested we plan a vacation together. A fresh start, she called it. I smiled and nodded. I even booked a trip to Napa Valley, complete with a couple's spa package. All part of the plan. One night, while she was asleep, I went through her work laptop. She had forgotten to log out. That's when I saw it all. Emails to Mark. Some disguised as work messages, others blatantly personal. She called him my peace and the man who makes my soul smile. She never said things like that about me. There were plans, too. She'd written about how she couldn't wait for Phase 2, how they would make it work eventually. I didn't know what Phase 2 was, but I assumed it had something to do with ending our marriage. Perfect, because I was already one step ahead. I started visiting a divorce attorney during my lunch breaks. I learned everything I needed to know. The house was in my name. She'd wanted to keep her credit free for her career. That was going to work in my favor. We had no kids, which made things simpler. I also learned that if I could prove adultery, especially with someone close to the family, I could seek damages. But that wasn't enough for me. I didn't just want a clean break. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they did. I wanted the memory of what they lost to follow them. I planned my move for the night before our anniversary. I told her I had something special planned. She lit up like a schoolgirl. I could almost believe she still cared. She wore the red dress I bought her 2 years ago. Said it reminded her of when we first met. She had no idea what was coming. I took her to the restaurant where we had our first date. She talked about the early days, about how we'd come so far. She even teared up a little. It was an act, of course, but I played along. I smiled. I toasted to new beginnings, then I handed her the envelope. Inside was a full breakdown of her affair. Dates, photos, emails, even a flash drive. Her smile faded instantly. "What is this?" she whispered, voice trembling. "You tell me," I said, calm as ever. "I figured you might want a copy for your scrapbook." She tried to deny it at first, then tried to cry, then tried to get angry. Said I had invaded her privacy. Said I was controlling. I told her I'd already filed for divorce, told her the house would remain mine, told her I'd be seeking damages, and that I had a lawyer ready to subpoena Mark's employer. His company had a strict no fraternization policy. It would cost him his job. She looked like she was going to collapse. I paid the check, left her at the table, and walked out. When I got home, I changed the locks. She came back that night, banging on the door, sobbing. I didn't open it. I sat on the couch, turned up the volume on the TV, and waited until she left. That was just the beginning. I'll tell you what came next when you're ready. After I left her at the restaurant and locked her out of the house, the fallout came fast. Faster than even I expected. That night, I sat in the living room, sipping a glass of water, listening to her bang on the front door, crying, yelling, apologizing, then blaming me, then begging. It cycled over and over until I finally heard the sound of her footsteps retreat down the driveway. I thought I would feel satisfaction, but all I felt was stillness, like I had stepped outside of myself. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I wasn't sick, of course. I just didn't want to walk into the office with the weight of everything still hanging in the air. Instead, I met with my lawyer again. We filed the formal petition for divorce and submitted all the evidence. We also sent a courtesy notice to Mark's employer. I wasn't trying to be vindictive for the sake of it, but I wasn't about to let the man who stabbed me in the back walk away clean. Let him feel what it's like to have a future ripped out from under him. Rachel tried texting and calling nonstop. When I blocked her, she emailed. She even sent a handwritten letter through the mail, 2 pages long, full of tear-streaked apologies and claims that it didn't mean anything, that she was lost and made a terrible mistake. But I knew the truth. It hadn't been a mistake. It was a choice. Over and over, day after day. You don't accidentally end up in a hotel room with your husband's best friend. You don't accidentally lie to someone who trusted you with their whole life. She had built her little fantasy world, and now it was crumbling around her. I took 2 weeks off work and went to visit my parents. I hadn't told them much at first, just said Rachel and I were going through something. But after the official paperwork was in motion, I told them everything. My father, usually a quiet man, shook with anger. My mom cried, holding my hand as if I were still a child. They offered to let me stay as long as I needed, but I told them I had to go back and finish what I started. There was still more to be done. When I returned to the city, Rachel had moved into a hotel. I had her things boxed up and delivered there. I included a note. You packed your secrets well. I've packed your stuff better. What came next was harder than I anticipated. People started asking questions, friends, colleagues, her family, mine. At first, I didn't want to talk about it, but I learned something important. Silence only protects the guilty. So I told the truth. When mutual friends asked why Rachel had moved out, I told them. Calmly, factually, I showed the proof when necessary. Some of them were shocked. Others, not so much. Apparently, a few people had their suspicions for a while but didn't want to get involved. The only people who seemed genuinely surprised were Mark's family. I'd been close to them too. His younger brother called me, furious, said Mark was spiraling, that he'd lost his job, that Rachel had moved in with him, but they were fighting constantly. Good, I thought. Let the fantasy fall apart. I didn't stop there. I found out Rachel had been in line for a major promotion at her job. So I sent a confidential note to HR attaching copies of the emails she had sent from her work account, personal emails to Mark during office hours, using company resources. I didn't lie, I just handed them the truth. A week later, she was placed on leave pending an internal investigation. She tried calling me again after that. I didn't answer. She had made her choices. Now she could live with them. One day, a message popped up from Mark. A long-winded apology said he never meant for this to happen, that he valued our friendship, and understood if I never wanted to speak again. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to his girlfriend, the one he'd been with before starting his affair with Rachel. She had no idea. She does now. I thought about revenge constantly in those weeks. Not the screaming, throwing things kind, but the quiet, strategic kind. I wasn't looking to ruin lives for fun. I just believed that actions should have consequences, especially when they're this deliberate. But in the middle of all that chaos, something strange happened. I started finding myself again. The house felt empty at first, sure, but it was peaceful. I rearranged the living room, got rid of things that reminded me of her, repainted the walls. I started cooking for myself again, real meals, not just cereal at 9 p.m. I joined a gym, something I'd been putting off for years. I even picked up photography, a hobby I had let go of back in college. It felt good to be alone. Not lonely, just alone, clear-headed, free. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I bumped into an old friend, Lisa, from my college days. She'd been a friend of Rachel's too, but we had our own connection back then. She asked how things were going. I hesitated, but she already seemed to know. Yeah, she said quietly. She's been burning bridges left and right. I'm sorry, man. We got coffee that week. Not as a date, just as two people reconnecting. It felt normal, easy. We talked about work, music, books, the absurdity of adulthood. I didn't tell her everything, but I didn't have to. She understood. That meeting was the first of many. Over time, it reminded me that life wasn't over just because one chapter ended, that there were still good people in the world, honest people. But I wasn't done yet. I still had one more step to take. Our divorce proceedings were nearing finalization. My lawyer told me everything was going in my favor. The house was secure, my finances untouched. Rachel had lost her job by then, and Mark had been forced to relocate after losing his as well. They were living in a rented apartment on the edge of the city. The fairy tale was officially dead. So I planned something symbolic. I took Rachel's old wedding ring, the one she left on the bathroom counter the day she moved out, and had it melted down into a small, simple key. Then I mailed it to her. No note, no explanation, just a key. Let her wonder what it opened. Let it haunt her. Maybe it would remind her of the door she closed forever. or the one she'll never be able to open again. In the coming weeks, she tried to reach out one last time. An email, said she missed me, said she still loved me, said she had made a mistake and wanted to start over. But starting over wasn't an option anymore. I didn't reply. I had already started over. Not with someone else, not with a rebound or a distraction, but with myself, with rebuilding what she tried to destroy. And that, I think, was the best revenge of all. I'll tell you how it all ended in the last part. Just say when you're ready. About a year had passed since everything unraveled. I was in a completely different place, mentally, emotionally, even physically. I sold the house. Too many memories lived in those walls, and I didn't need to keep dragging the past behind me like an old suitcase. I bought a smaller place across town, something I could make entirely mine. No ghosts, no lingering lies. People always say time heals everything, but that's only partially true. Time dulls the sharpness, sure, but what really heals is what you do with that time. I used mine to grow, to reflect, to remember who I was before all the betrayal. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Rachel and Mark had broken up. Apparently things got ugly, financial stress, constant arguing, resentment over everything that had happened. I wasn't surprised. When a relationship is built on lies, it collapses under its own weight. Mark tried messaging me again once. Just a simple, "Hope you're well." I ignored it. Rachel never reached out again. Maybe she finally understood that the door was closed for good. As for me, I didn't rush into anything new. I focused on rebuilding my life. I traveled, made new friends. I went hiking in Colorado, something I always wanted to do but never did because she hated the cold. I reconnected with old college buddies, started mentoring at a local youth center, gave back some of what I had lost. Then, one evening, I sat by the window in my new home, watching the sunset, and I realized I felt at peace. Not angry, not hurt, just free. That was my real revenge. Not in destroying Rachel or Mark, not in humiliating them, but in refusing to let their betrayal define me. I had turned the page. I had written a new chapter. And this time, it was mine alone.